You know, in the original movie Finding Nemo, they had some great characters, but some of the characters didn't match what they were. Like they had a clownfish in it that wasn't very funny. And then they had a shark that was nice and really didn't want to eat people or eat other fish. But the thing that they had in there that was right on was the seagull. Every time the seagull saw food, they yelled out, "Mine, mine, mine." And they were really greedy. And it was kind of like the man in today's gospel. The man in today's gospel came by his wealth honestly. His farms yielded a bountiful harvest. He enjoyed life and was far-sighted enough and practical enough to save for the future. But he is called a fool. Why? Well, he's self-centered. He talks about his wealth as though he did it by himself, and he has no concern for others. The man was not foolish for building bigger barns. He was foolish because as soon as he had more than he could use, his first thought was, how can I store it? How can I save it for myself? Not, how can I share it? He was like the seagull, mine, mine, mine. Jesus is warning today about greed and the desire to have more. The desire can harm you. And what you need is to get rich with what is important to God. If you lose sight of God, you are poor, and you choose to be a fool. St. Paul in the second reading reminds us that Christ should be the center and our light. While seeking for what is above, St. Paul says, "Put to death, then, the parts of you that are earthy, immoral, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, that is idolatry." All of these vices indicate that a person's focus and sense of values are self-centered instead of Christ-centered. And it's easy to regard possessions as treasures and find so much pleasure in them, and we want more and more and more. And this is the greed trap that Jesus is warning against. How do we let ourselves fall into this trap? Certainly, when we see advertisements on TV and magazines, they play a role in convincing us that we need to own everything, especially what's new and improved. Our own insecurities also play a role. The more we possess, the more important we tend to think we are. But as Luke in the Gospel indicates, greed is a sin that can be addictive. Instead of feeling fulfilled by attaining the things we crave, we feel that it still isn't enough and we want more. It's a vicious cycle. But the solution to greed is very simple. It's to share that value that we learned when we were very small as children. Sharing our time and possession makes us rich towards God. Where do you see the sin of greed at work in our world today? Well, of course, you can always look to our politicians, and I see greed all the time, especially here in the state of Illinois. We had a Congressman, Denny Hastert, who was a science teacher and a wrestling coach. And he had some other problems recently in his life. But one of the things is he went and served 20 years as a representative and went in as a science teacher and just a wrestling coach, and came out worth between $12 and $20 million. Something's wrong, and it's one of those things where it's mine, mine, mine. And where and when could you or your friends and your family share more? And don't fall into that greed trap by sharing. You know, one of the things that we try to teach our children and grandchildren is to share more. We know how it's important, and when we do see them share, we encourage them that they're doing a good job and that's a good share more. Last fall, I was unloading some feed bags from my truck, and my 3-year-old grandson, Gavin, was watching. He was eating one of those popcorn balls that you get around Halloween time, and I kind of like those. They're kind of sticky and stuff too, but they're really kind of sugary, and I really like them. So as I was unloading the feed bags, I asked him for a bite, and he's really good at sharing. So he offered me a bite, and I took a bite and unloaded a couple more feed bags, and I grabbed another bite, and about the 4th bite, I looked, and he was not only sharing it with me, he was sharing it with the family dog. Explained why it was so wet as I was grabbing a bite. But we told him that he was a good sharer, but I'm real careful now when he shares stuff with me now. And Gavin happens to be here in the congregation today. Gavin, raise your hand so everybody can see you over there. It's about in the center. He's really a good sharer. He's also a very good person if you ever need frogs caught or fish caught. He's very good at those two things too. I got a tip for the parents too, for one of the things that for helping you get your kids to share or be better. If they're doing something like not sharing or something at the dinner table, what we do at our house is usually I copy the thing that the child's having a problem with. And I exaggerate a little bit. Say if it's not sharing, I say I'm not going to share and I won't share. And my wife, his grandma, will send me to the corner. And you should see the look at the kids and the grandkids' face when Grandpa has to go and stand in the corner until he learns to share. And sometimes when I get sent to the corner, I get a little whack on the behind, which I kind of like. But I spend a lot of time in the corner. But the kids see the power that Grandma has to even send Grandpa there, and they tend to do their things like sharing or not throwing a fit or doing something like that a lot better when they see some adult standing in the corner. What changes do you need to make you rich towards God? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how generous are you? How generous are you? Dynamic Catholic did a study. And they say that the happiest people and the most generous are the most generous. And the happiest people are not controlled by their wealth. And if their money was gone, their lives would still have passion and purpose and happiness. Share what God has given you. Maybe try this week to give away one thing of value to someone else. Pick something and give it away. Don't worry about how much you have left. Worry about how much you give. You know, when I was in Israel, I was on a boat, a tour boat on the Sea of Galilee. And the tour guide that was on the boat shared a poem with me. It's always been one of my favorite poems for the last 10 years or so. And the title of it's The Two Seas of Palestine by Bruce Barton. There are two seas in Palestine. One is fresh and fish are in it. Splashes of green adorn its banks. Trees spread their branches over it and stretch out their thirsty roots to sip of its healing waters. The river Jordan make this sea sparkling water from the hills, so it laughs in the sunshine. And men build their houses near it. Birds build their nests, and every kind of life is happier because it's there. The river Jordan flows on south into another sea. Here there is no splash of fish, no fluttering leaf, no song of birds, and no children's laughter. Travelers choose another route unless on urgent business. The air hangs heavy above its water, and neither man nor beast nor fowl will drink. What makes this mighty difference in these neighboring seas? Not the Jordan River. It empties the same good water into both. Not the soil in which they lie, and not the country around it. This is the difference. The Sea of Galilee receives, but it does not keep the Jordan. For every drop that flows into it, another drop flows out. The giving and receiving go on in equal measure. The other sea is shrewder, hoarding its income jealously. It will not be tempted into the generous impulse. Every drop it gets, it keeps. The Sea of Galilee gives and lives. The other sea gives nothing. It is named dead. There are two kinds of people in this world, and there are two seas in Palestine.